Welcome back to Truth Crime, the channel where true crime meets deep dives into the darkest corners of the web. I'm your host, Samuel. If you're a fan of real stories that sound too wild to be true, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. And don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading what you all think about these cases. Today's episode is a jaw-dropping ride through digital rebellion, dark web dealings, undercover agents, and a sting operation straight out of a Hollywood thriller. We're diving deep into the true story of the man behind the Silk Road, a website that defied the U.S. government and changed the way we think about the internet, crime, and freedom. This is the rise and fall of the Silk. In the early 2010s, a man, let's call him Pirate, found himself growing increasingly frustrated with the way the U.S. government regulated commerce, imposed restrictions, and monitored financial transactions. At just 27 years old, he saw these regulations as overreach, an infringement on personal freedoms, and an obstacle to true free trade. Determined to create a space where people could engage in transactions without government interference, he came up with a bold idea. One day in 2011, inspiration struck. What if he built an online marketplace where anonymity was paramount? A digital black market where users could buy and sell virtually anything, from counterfeit documents to narcotics and even illicit weapons, without ever revealing their identities. The site would operate similarly to Amazon, with users able to browse, purchase, and even leave reviews for vendors. The key to keeping it untraceable? Bitcoin, a decentralized digital currency that ensured financial transactions remained difficult to track. With this vision in mind, Pirate got to work. He enlisted the help of a skilled programmer and after months of development, launched his marketplace on the dark web. He named it the Silk Road. The rise of the Silk Road. Almost immediately, Silk Road took off. Word spread rapidly through underground forums, encrypted chat groups, and whispers among those seeking unregulated commerce. By 2012, just a year after its launch, the platform had thousands of active users, and its revenue was skyrocketing. At this stage, Pirate had expanded operations, employing around 10 people to help manage the site. The marketplace was generating an astonishing $500,000 in weekly sales, with Pirate collecting a percentage of every transaction. By this point, his estimated worth had climbed into the tens of millions. But despite his newfound wealth, he lived frugally, rarely spending his fortune as he remained fixated on running the platform. However, Silk Road's rapid success came with a price. The more people talked about it, the more attention it drew, including from the U.S. government, the very entity Pirate had hoped to evade. The federal investigation begins. By late 2012, the Silk Road had made enough noise to attract the full attention of several federal agencies, the FBI, DEA, IRS, and even Homeland Security. They launched a joint investigation to uncover who was behind the site and how it was able to flourish beneath their noses. The investigation began with data mining. Analysts combed through internet traffic, forum posts, and transaction records linked to Bitcoin wallets. Cybersecurity experts studied the source code of Silk Road's login portals, trying to find any holes or patterns that would point toward its creators. Agents infiltrated forums posing as buyers, sellers, and hackers, gathering intel and creating maps of the network's most active participants. Among the agents was Carl Force, a veteran DEA agent with experience in cyber investigations. He created an alias and built up a presence on Silk Road as a high-volume buyer. Over time, he developed rapport with several major vendors and eventually struck up a digital friendship with Pirate himself. Force's job was to gain as much trust and access as possible without blowing his cover. The breakthrough came when agents identified one of Pirate's top associates. Operating under the alias Chronic Pain, this individual handled significant administrative duties and vendor management for the site. The feds orchestrated a sting operation leading to Chronic Pain's arrest. They seized devices, extracted files, and interrogated him. Through metadata and wallet tracking, they began piecing together an operational hierarchy. While most suspects used Tor browsers and encryption, small slip-ups, such as an old email linked to a Bitcoin wallet or a reused pseudonym, allowed investigators to connect real-world identities to Silk Road activity. Each of these breadcrumbs brought them closer to the elusive pirate. A deadly decision. In 2013, desperate to protect himself and his empire, Pirate allegedly sought to have Chronic Pain assassinated. He reached out to someone he believed could arrange a hit, offering $80,000 to have his former employee silenced. What he didn't realize was that the person he was dealing with was none other than Carl Force, the undercover DEA agent. Instead of following through on the murder-for-hire request, the authorities staged a fake execution. They took photos of Chronic Pain, making it appear as though he had been kidnapped, tortured, and ultimately killed. They even poured soup on him to mimic blood. Upon receiving the photos, Pirate believed the job had been completed. What he didn't know was that law enforcement was closing in on him. The hunt for Pirate. By this point, multiple federal agencies were collaborating to identify and locate the mastermind behind the Silk Road. The biggest challenge? Pirate had gone to great lengths to conceal his identity. Even his own employees didn't know who he truly was. After an exhaustive digital hunt, investigators finally traced the Silk Road server activity to an internet cafe in San Francisco. Digging deeper, they connected this location to a real-world residence nearby, Pirate's home. With this breakthrough, they knew they were close. But there was one major obstacle standing in their way. Pirate's laptop was the key to securing a conviction. If it was locked or encrypted when they arrested him, it would be significantly harder to prove his role in the operation. To ensure they obtained the evidence they needed, authorities had to catch him off guard while his laptop was open and logged in. The library sting. After weeks of surveillance, federal agents learned that Pirate frequently worked from the San Francisco Public Library. They devised an elaborate distraction to make their move. Two undercover agents entered the library, posing as a couple engaged in a heated argument. As their stage fight escalated, one of them threw a punch, creating a dramatic scene. Predictably, Pirate turned his attention toward the commotion, just long enough for another agent to swoop in and snatch his open laptop. A moment later, additional agents moved in, arresting Pirate before he could react. The trial and sentencing. As authorities dug into the Silk Road's financial records, they uncovered staggering numbers. The platform had facilitated over $1.2 billion in transactions, with Pirate personally making an estimated $184 million. But more damning than the financials was the human cost. At least 6 individuals had fatally overdosed on drugs purchased through the Silk Road. During the trial, heartbroken family members took the stand, recounting the devastating impact of the site's illicit trade. Although Pirate was never formally charged with attempted murder, prosecutors highlighted his alleged involvement in multiple assassination plots. Combined with the scale of his operation, these allegations painted a damning picture. Ultimately, Pirate was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While some viewed the punishment as excessive, arguing that he had merely created a website, the government saw it as necessary. In their eyes, Pirate had masterminded a billion-dollar black market that contributed to crime, addiction, and deaths. The corrupt agents, what came next would shock even seasoned legal experts. Carl Force, the DEA agent who had built trust with Pirate and helped orchestrate the sting, was discovered to have gone rogue during the investigation. In secret, he had created multiple aliases on the Silk Road, including some that weren't sanctioned by the DEA. Through these identities, he demanded payments and bribes from Pirate in exchange for sensitive information or leniency. In total, he siphoned roughly $750,000 worth of Bitcoin from Pirate into his personal accounts. But that's not all. Force attempted to cover his tracks by creating fake subpoena documents and redirecting messages to his private email servers. He even tried to sell inside information to other criminal enterprises posing as law enforcement. His betrayal wasn't just a breach of protocol, it was a full-blown criminal enterprise within a federal investigation. Another agent from the Secret Service, Sean Bridges, was also caught stealing Bitcoin during the investigation. Bridges used administrative access to Silk Road and confiscated accounts to redirect seized funds into wallets he controlled. He covered his digital footprints using various encryption methods, but forensic analysts eventually traced the transactions back to him. Bridges embezzled over $800,000 and was sentenced to nearly 6 years in prison. Together, these revelations of internal corruption cast a dark shadow over the integrity of the Silk Road investigation. Critics argued that if the agents enforcing the law were breaking it themselves, it called into question the legitimacy of the entire case. A shocking turn of events, for years Pirate languished in prison, facing what seemed to be an inescapable fate. But in an unforeseen development, in 2025, the U.S. government issued a formal pardon, granting him his freedom after a decade behind bars. Whether justice was truly served remains a hotly debated topic. Some see Pirate as a pioneer of internet freedom, others as a reckless criminal. But one thing is certain, the story of the Silk Road is one of the most infamous cases in the history of the digital age. A cautionary tale of ambition, crime, government intervention, and the ever-blurring line between innovation and illegality.